Hey guys, my name is Eduardo. I'm Pinlord on Instagram, and I'm here to show you how to make your own enamel pins. Making your own pins is actually really easy. Anyone can do it. And there's 3 things you need to know. Number 1, have your pin design. Number 2, have your factory requirements. And number 3, finding the right factory to make it for you. Number 1, enamel pin design. So, a factory actually only needs a PDF file of your artwork to turn it into an enamel pin. I like to use my iPad. Some people like to use Photoshop. Other people draw it on paper, turn it into a PDF, and give it to the factory to turn it into an artwork that can be made into a pin. But overall, there's 2 main things you need to know to make your artwork as good as possible for an enamel pin. First, use really strong, bold, simple lines. And second, avoid shading. Here's an example. Boom, example. This is a really good enamel pin design. This is a really bad enamel pin design. This one's bad because it has a lot of little thin, detailed lines like the hair, in the eyes, in the forehead, in the chest area. This one does not. This one just has really strong, simple, bold lines. The reason why this is necessary is because pins are made out of metal and it cannot incorporate all this detail because it'll blend into each other. So this is what you're going for, right? Cool. Second, here, the coloring in the mouth, as you can tell, is a bit of blend. We tend to use that when it comes to just general drawing, but for enamel pins, you cannot blend colors into each other because all colors are separated by lines. So here, I also have the color around the lips, but it's again separated by lines and I cannot shade it into each other. Bad, good. That's how you do a good enamel pin design. Your factory requirement number 1, pin material. There's actually a bunch of materials people make pins from, but most people make pins from 2 materials, soft enamel and hard enamel. I'm going to show you the difference between both. Soft enamel, here's another example, here's another example. Soft enamel tends to be a little bit cheaper than hard enamel. It also tends to allow for a bit more detail in the lines, just because it allows for more thin lines. But also, as you can tell, you'll see a bit of indentation when it comes to the lines in the material. They're also a bit thinner. And in my opinion, overall, they feel a little bit less quality compared to hard enamel. The good thing about these is they tend to be cheaper. So that's a really good option for you if you're starting off without that much of a budget. When it comes to hard enamel, here's a hard enamel pin, here's a hard enamel pin, that's a hard enamel pin. So hard enamel compared to soft enamel, as you can tell, has a bit more of like a sheen, glossy feel. They're a bit thicker. They also feel a little bit more weighty. The thing about hard enamel is that it doesn't allow for as much detail compared to soft enamel. Hard enamel tends to bleed into each other, so you can't do as detailed designs. Also, hard enamel tends to be a little bit more expensive, but if you're going for more of like a high quality feel to your pins, I'd say start with hard enamel. Hard enamel, soft enamel, pick whatever pin material is best for you. Cool. So now you know what material you want your pin to be. Factory requirement number 2 is knowing what size you want your pin to be. Here's an example of a big pin. Whoa, there it is. Here's an example of a small pin. So what's the difference? Big pins overall allow for a lot more detail just because they're in a bigger size. Larger pins also tend to be a bit more expensive because factories price their pins in terms of the amount of material they're going to use. Not as much how many colors, but as more in terms of how big your pin is going to be. So this one is likely going to be a lot more expensive than this one. If you're starting with a smaller budget, I would recommend going with smaller pins. Also, in my opinion, smaller pins tend to be a little bit easier to pin on wherever you want, as in comparison to a really big pin. So I tend to like small ones, but of course, you can make both. So all you need to know is just tell your factory how many inches your pin is going to be. This one is around 1 inch. This one is around almost 2 inches. So you'll tell the factory, hey, I want this design to be 2 inches. I want this design to be 1 inch. That's the second factory requirement. All right, so now you know what material your pin is going to be, and now you know what size it's going to be. The third factory requirement is knowing how many units you want to produce of your pin. This one's pretty easy because most factories have a minimum requirement of 100 units of a pin to start production. So that's where you got to start. Also, of course, you can make more pins, and the price per pin is going to be a little bit cheaper depending on the factory. But if you're just starting off, I would really recommend starting off with 100 units of a design. The reason is, it's actually really hard to be able to know how many pins you're going to sell when you're just starting. So you don't want to buy a bunch of pins and then just be stuck with a lot of inventory you won't be able to sell. So a good measure, if you're just starting off, start with 100 pins, and that's also the minimum requirement most factories have. Great. You know what material you're going to use, you know what size your pin is, you know how many units you're going to produce, and the fourth and final factory requirement is knowing how many pinbacks you're going to have. What the hell are pinbacks? Pinbacks are just those needles that you use to pin your pin wherever you want to pin it to. You can have 1 or 2 or 3 if you want. I would recommend always having 2 pinbacks. And this tends to be a rookie mistake. I started ordering my pins with 1 pinback, but the problem with 1 pinback is that not only whenever you pin it, it's much easier for it to move around, but also having 1 pinback means that it's easier for it to fall off. And if you've owned a pin before, you know how annoying it can be for your pin to fall off. So if you want to make it safer and easier to pin for your buyers, always use 2 pinbacks. Please. Believe me, I made the same mistake. Use 2 pinbacks. Alright, my friends. So you got your enamel pin design ready, and you got your 4 factory requirements ready. Now it's time we find the right factory. This is how we do it. The way you find the right enamel pin factory is actually just by searching enamel pin factories on Google or Alibaba. Once you do that search, you'll find that most results are factories that all kind of seem the same. So how can you tell the difference between what a good factory is and what a bad factory is? You do that by asking them the right questions when you email them. So when you get started, pick the 2 or 3 or 4 Google or Alibaba results that seem the best for you and email them with a photo of your design, your factory requirements, and ask them the 4 following questions. First question is, how much will it cost me to produce 100 units of this design? Because you've included a photo of your artwork, as well as the factory requirements, the factory will be able to give you a price estimate of how much it'll cost you to produce with them. The factory that gives you the best price, that's the factory you should go with. Second question, what's your turnaround time once the final artwork is approved? So if you decide to produce a pin with a factory, they'll send you a production-ready artwork for you to approve. Once you approve it, you want to work with a factory that'll give you the fastest turnaround time from the time you approve it to the time it's delivered to your door. The factory that gives you the shortest turnaround time is the factory you should produce with. Third question. So you'll ask the factory, can you send me a photo of the final produced pin before you ship it out? The reason why you want to ask the factory this question is because a lot of the time, without having that step in the process, a factory will finish production for you, ship it your way, and if there's any errors or mistakes they've made in the production of your pin, you won't have leverage to be able to ask for your money back. So asking for a photo before they ship it out is a way for you to be able to check for any errors and ask for them to change them before they ship it out to you. This will help you to reduce mistakes and improve your probability of getting the pin that you want. The fourth and final question is, you'll ask the factory, do you accept 50% payment up front and 50% payment once the final photo of the produced pin is approved? The reason why you're going to ask this question is because, again, going in line with the question before this, paying 50% once the final photo is approved will give you leverage to ask for any changes if you see mistakes in the way they produce your pin. A lot of the time, factories will just ship you the stuff, and if there's errors, you won't have any leverage to ask for your money back. Having a 50% payment once the final photo is approved will give you the opportunity to ask for changes and give you a higher likelihood that the factory will come through because they want your payment. Those are the 4 questions you should ask your factory. The factory that gives you the best responses for those 4 questions is a factory you should go with. That's it, guys. That's all you need to know to make your enamel pin. You got your pin design, your factory requirements, and you found the right factory to produce it for you. I'm going to make it easier for you by also including an article with a list of the factories that I've worked with in the past. That tends to be the hardest part of the process, so I hope that helps you out. I'm also going to include a bunch of other articles that have helped me produce and make a living from my own pins. So I hope those help you too. Thank you so much for looking at this video. You can follow me on Instagram under Pinlord. You can subscribe to this channel. I'll be making a bunch more videos to help you make pins. I hope you like it.